The hall still smelled of spiced wine and crushed roses when the laughter died. Music faltered. Doves fluttered madly between chandeliers as if the air itself had turned against them. The boy on the high seat, his boy, gaped and frothed and clutched at his throat like a fish hooked through the gill. His crown slid askew, a stagger of gold and rubies, and the guests became a sea that receded and swelled at once, drawn away by fear, then pushed forward by the grotesque pull of spectacle. Jaime Lannister was moving before he knew he had moved. He had seen men drown in their own blood. He had seen kings die. The difference here was the sound that tore the hall. A mother's sound, feral and without language. Cersei was already at the dais, ripping at Joffrey's collar, shrieking for a maester, for Pycelle, for anyone. Tyrion stood below her, face gone white as the tablecloth, goblet still in his hand like a thing that had betrayed him. Around them banners rippled in air stirred by panic, and the smell of meat and candle smoke turned cloying. "Ser Meryn," Jaime snapped, his voice colder than his blood felt. "On me, Loras with Tommen." The white cloaks flickered into motion. The room's edges stretched and warped as men shoved and tripped and tried not to look and looked all the same. Joffrey's eyes bulged, then hazed. He made a sound, a thin bleat, and Jaime met it at once with the old iron in him. Not the iron of hatred that had driven him in a throne room of shadowed swords, but the iron of habit. He lifted Cersei's hands away, gentle and firm. Her fingers were claws slashing backwards at him. Let me, she gasped, hair unraveling across her face as she pressed her ear to the rattle in Joffrey's chest, as if she might breathe for him, as if she might drag the poison out through her own lungs. "Your Grace," Pycelle panted, knees creaking, trembling stoop and trembling beard. He fumbled vials and wafted the odor of old spices and older dust. Joffrey's tongue swung terribly in his mouth. The maester's hands shook so badly that the stopper of one vial spun away, tapping across the marble in ridiculous cheer. "Clear the hall," Jaime said. "What?" Cersei spat the word like the poison itself. "Clear the hall." He turned and the white turned with him. "Now." Loras Tyrell was already lifting Tommen from his seat, sleek as a cat in his polished plates, the boy king to be pale as cream and clutching uselessly at Loras's gorget. Marjorie stood tall and steady beside them, face lifted, eyes bright and scanning every doorway and balcony and shadow as if she had been born to this stage and had only been waiting for the cue. Good, Jaime thought without thinking. She has a soldier's head. "Ser Balon, to the doors," Jaime called. "Ser Meryn, keep the dais. Everyone out now." Gold cloaks had begun pushing through, black and yellow cloaks fanning the room. The music had long died, and in its absence the scrape of boots and low moans and the whisper of silk were a strange kind of percussion. People were weeping, though scarcely anyone yet for the king, and the ones who wept most were the ones calculating the fastest. "Seize him!" Cersei screamed suddenly, voice splitting, arm arrowing at Tyrion. "Seize the dwarf! He did this!" The nearest gold cloaks hesitated and looked to Jaime. Tywin Lannister had entered at the far end of the hall, half his retinue clinging to his wake like weather vanes to a storm. The Lord of Casterly Rock had a look on his face that might have been grief in some other man. In him it was more like accounting, a careful read of the room's ledger, who owed what now, who could be made to pay. "Hold," Jaime said, and the gold cloaks held. Tyrion's eyes flicked to Jaime's. A brief flare of fear and something like gratitude before his mouth tightened into the miserable parody of amusement he wore like a shield. "Brother," he said, careful as stepping stones. "You know." "Not now," Jaime snapped, and it wasn't anger at Tyrion he spoke into, but the entire roaring pit of the hall of the day, of all the years that had led to this boy choking purple in a castle fat with banners. "He is not to be harmed," he said, and he pitched the words to travel, to hook into ears. "He is not to be touched save by my order." "Jaime!" Cersei had Joffrey's face between her hands now, her cheek pressed to his cheek. "He's dying. He's—" The word failed. She looked up at him, and for an instant he saw not a queen nor a rival nor the woman who had sent him to war. He saw the girl he had held under oaks, the girl who had tasted of summer wine and laughter and wickedness. She tried again, and then there wasn't a word left big enough. Joffrey stopped moving. The sound went out of the world and then came back in a rush. Pycelle was mumbling prayers or recipes. People were falling to their knees because kneeling was the habit of half a lifetime and they did not know what else to do. Varys stood by a pillar with his hands folded, eyes soft and remote. Olenna Tyrell had become a stone carved to smile. "Ser Loras," Jaime said, and his voice felt like some other man's, a steadier man, a man who did not tremble. "Take Tommen to Maegor's Holdfast. Ser Valon e Campany. Osmond, Meryn on me." Cersei was making no sound now. Jaime stepped toward her. He had made a dozen choices in rooms like this. Some had been swords in hands and some had been knives in hearts. He had never made one that felt like stepping into a fire with bare feet. "Cersei," he said, and even her name was a dangerous thing. An intimacy he should not have given voice in public. "For the king's safety, for Tommen, you must come with me." Her head snapped toward him. "I am the king's mother," she hissed, and there were spots of spittle on her lips. "I am the queen regent. I will not be herded like some kitchen slut." "For the king's safety," he repeated, because that was armor, a ritual line, a white cloak stitched into vowels. "Or you will come with me. You will not give orders to the city watch. You will not name men guilty. You will not set the city burning because your grief wants kindling." Everything else in the hall blurred at the edges. She rose slowly. For a heartbeat he thought she would yield, as she had sometimes yielded in a room the world did not see. Then she lifted her chin, and he saw the steel of the rock etched into her face, the exact same line he saw in the mirror when he shaved. "Touch me," she said quietly, "and you are lost to me forever." He did not say that he had been losing her a day at a time since the day they were born. He did not say that forever had become a word he no longer trusted. He gestured, and Meryn Trant and Osmond Kettleblack stepped forward, too eager by half, too pleased to lay hands on the lioness. Cersei did not fight them as they took her arms, which was almost worse. She moved like a queen from an older story, the kind they carved on tombs. Stiff and unseeing and perfect. Joffrey lay at her feet with his mouth open, like a child waiting for a spoon that would never come. Tywin was suddenly at Jaime's shoulder, mountain fast, improbable and crushing. "Release the queen," he said, not loudly, not quietly. It was a statement of how the day would go. Jaime turned. "For the king's safety," he said again, and he made the words a wall. "Until the small council has convened and set keepers upon order. A dozen men would burn half a ward tonight if allowed. Your granddaughter may be next if we let panic pick its targets." "Our granddaughter," Tywin said, eyes like coin. The correction was deliberate. "Release the queen." "The king's guard protects the king," Jaime said. Some part of him was astonished at how simple the world could be if you looked at it as if the vows were stones that did not move. "Until Tommen is safe and the city is quiet, no one flies banners that have not been unfurled by the council. No one summons the watch but through me." If Tywin felt anything, he did not show it. He measured Jaime as he had measured horses and armies and markets. "You will learn, perhaps, what it is to hold a line," he said, and there was even a sliver of pride in it, thin as a wafer. "See to your oath. We will convene." Cersei laughed, a low, wrong sound. "You think," she said, and the laugh broke into syllables. "You think he is protecting Tommen, father. He is protecting the imp." "He is protecting the crown," Tywin said, and for the first time that day Jaime heard the older metal, the one that had made men follow his father whether they feared him or not. "That is all. Enough." Jaime gestured, and they led Cersei out through a chaos that parted for her like cloth. People studiously looked away or stared too openly. Qyburn slipped through the shuffling clusters like smoke, all in gray, eyes alight in the rattle of his bones. He watched the queen go with a scholar's interest. The moon had risen pale and fat over the city, drowning in torchlight. On the bridge to Maegor's Holdfast, the river stink came up in gusts. The guards at the holdfast doors stiffened and then stumbled over themselves to open them, dragons snarling over their heads in wrought iron. "Her chambers," Jaime told them, "with 2 silent sisters and twice as many guards. No visitors without my word." "Your word." Cersei's voice tripped over contempt. "The hand speaks for the king, not the brother who broke his vows for his whore of a sister." "Enough, your grace," Jaime said, and it was a kindness to both of them. He did not look at her again. He watched the shadows at the edges of the holdfast, the little boats bumping at their rings below, the flicker of a white cat's eyes beneath a walkway. This was what he knew how to do. He was a sword. He could at least be a sword in the right direction. He left Cersei in a room that smelled of rose oil and old quarrels and went to find Tommen. Tommen had been installed in a chamber so heavily guarded that the air could scarcely find its way in. Loras sat by the door, visor up, his famous beauty composed into something almost priestly. Beyond the bed curtains, Marjorie knelt by the boy, speaking so softly that her words arrived to Jaime as a thread of music and nothing more. Ser Pounce, insulted at so many boots in his domain, stared from the headboard as if deciding which eyelids to pounce upon next. "Ser Jaime," Loras said, rising. "Let him sleep if he can," Jaime said. "We will set watches in depth. No one but his intended, the Hand, and the Kingsguard. Begin your list with men who were not drinking tonight." "That leaves very few, my lord," Loras said. He didn't smile, but the corner of his mouth knew how. "Then it will be a short list," Jaime said. "Short lists are easier checked." Loras's eyes flicked toward the bed and then back. "Lady Marjorie has the boy's hand," he said, and for the first time the stiffness in his shoulders softened. He was not a knight or a cousin or a sword. He was a brother. "He breathes as if he were younger than he is. He does not understand what it means." Jaime thought of himself at 15 with a blade in his hand and a different king choking on his own pride at the foot of a different throne. He had understood too much then and too little. "Few men do," he said. "Will the queen be?" Loras did not finish the sentence. Sometimes political acumen looked very much like piety in the mouth of a beautiful knight sworn to chastity. "Contained," Jaime said. "It will not be long, but long enough." They looked at each other for a moment over a gulf made of arrangements and mathematics. "You will not find an enemy in us," Loras said finally. Jaime made no reply. The weight of the words was too obvious to comment upon. In grief, men chose sides faster than they knew how to pray. He found Tyrion in a side chamber, heavily guarded by 2 gold cloaks and a Kingsguard he trusted less than he trusted the moon. Varys was present, hands folded, expression properly distressed. "So," Tyrion said, cupping a goblet he dared not bring to his lips, "I hear our nephew choked to death on a day of feasting. They will be writing the songs before the boy's crown has time to cool." "Don't," Jaime said. Tyrion's mouth tilted. "You are right. Forgive me. I am a monster and monsters do what they do. I am keeping you here until the council decides the course," Jaime said. "You will not be harmed. No one will enter without me." "A kind prison," Tyrion said. "Bars wrapped in velvet are bars all the same. Thank you, brother, genuinely. Stupid of me to drink at a Lannister feast. If I am to be hanged, it will be for appetite at least." "Stay put," Jaime said. He wanted to say more and did not know how. The years were heavy between them, heavier than 1 dead king and a pot of poison. "Eat nothing that is not tasted before you. Sleep with your knife under your pillow if you can find one. And," he paused, "Sansa is gone." Tyrion's eyes had been shifting from guard to guard, from Varys to the window to his cup. They froze now, sharpened. "Gone where?" he said too quickly. "I don't know," Jaime said, and that was the problem grinding at the back of his teeth. "We will find her if we can. The city has too many holes. If someone wanted her out, she was out before the boy's lips went blue." "The gods love their jests," Tyrion said. He was not laughing. "Give them a kingdom and a handful of poison, and they will laugh until the sky falls in." "Mourn later," Jaime said. He left before Tyrion could turn this into a talk that would leave blood in his throat. The small council met in a room awash with candles. The air was too bright, as if they hoped to drag the truth out of hiding by burning the shadows away. Tywin presided with an economy of posture. Mace Tyrell's girth occupied so much chair that the rest of him scarcely fit. When he wiped at his eyes, he watched the cloth as if tears might stain it too dearly. Varys had already arrived. Pycelle tottered in with red-rimmed eyes and a smell of bad winter. Oberyn Martell lounged as if in a garden. One boot crossed idly over his knee, the bells in his black hair faintly chiming when he turned his head. Qyburn hovered like an afterthought given legs. "The king is dead," Tywin said simply, and let the sentence sit. "Long live the king! Long live the king!" They echoed in messy cadence. "Joffrey Baratheon has been slain," Mace Tyrell added, and there was something almost needy in the way he looked at Tywin when he said it, like a boy waiting to see if he had got his lessons right. "Poisoned at his own wedding feast?" Pycelle said, mustering grief he had placed on and removed like a robe 36 times in his long life. "Vile. Vile beyond any. Poison leaves traces," Qyburn murmured. He had not been asked to speak. "In lips, in nails, under the tongue. I have taken no samples." "You will take nothing without my leave," Tywin said. "The particulars will be for later." "Your Grace," Mace said, turning with a weighty slowness toward Marjorie, who had come and sat without asking, eyes watchful and cool. "Ah, well, I am not queen," Marjorie said, her tone the very soul of proper sorrow. "Yet, and I will speak only when asked." She did not lower her eyes, nor raise them. Jaime found it strange how quickly he had come to like the girl. She did what she did with clean lines. "Then we ask," Oberyn said lazily. "Ask we do, don't we, Lord Hand? How was your grandson poisoned in a room heavy with your men, your maester, your guards, your banners? And how is it that the dwarf sits in a chamber with guards while the Queen Regent," he smiled, "rests in her rooms?" "Detained for her safety," Tywin said. His gaze drifted to Jaime and did not linger. "The blame will not be placed by screams and tears. We will pursue it as the law dictates. The city watch will be ordered to remain in the barracks until called. Any man on the streets for his own reason will be whipped. Your watch is led by your creature," Oberyn said almost pleasantly. "And your daughter, also your creature, is in a gilded room watched by your son. Do Dornish wrongs make bad wine in your mouth, Lord Tywin, or merely make every swallow choke a little?" Jaime was surprised at the little rush of satisfaction. He felt at the way Oberyn's words put color in Tywin's cheeks. Perhaps he was more tired of the old rules than he had thought. "The king's protection is the first matter," he said. "No man goes in or out of Maegor's holdfast unless the list reads them in. I compiled the list. The queen is calm or calmer. She will not give orders tonight. In the morning she will sit with us and hear our orders." Tywin's head moved slightly, a gesture no one who had not been raised in his house would have seen. It meant, "You did not do badly." It meant nothing else was forthcoming. "Suspects?" Varys murmured, letting the word ascend like a moth to the candles. "The imp will be named, and loudly. His wife is absent. The Tyrells will not like to hear their blossom is suspected. But the realm is made of tongues, and the tongues will wag." "Let them wag," Mace blurted. "Wag until the culprit is caught. My daughter will be queen. My son Loras is a member of the... He waved toward Jaime without exactly seeing him. "That white company." "Oberyn," Tywin said, as if the Prince of Dorne were a clerk whose accounts he wished to balance and put away. "What do you require?" The Prince of Dorne poured wine into his cup himself and did not offer any. "Justice," he said, and smiled at the banality of the word, as if he had expected more of himself. "We come in peace for that which is owed. My sister's name is in the mortar of your city, and I have not tasted anything so bitter. But I am not entirely without imagination. Bring me the men who did it." And here, at last, his eyes sharpened and the bells chimed. "And I will be content." "Viville." "I'll speak of Elia later," Tywin said. "If you wish justice for your sister, You will find that the crown has long memories and longer reach. We will also speak of the mountain. He is your creature, Oberyn said. Let us not pretend otherwise. And he serves the realm, Tywin said. Unlike poisoners, he kills under banners where all may see him. An interesting definition of service, Oberyn said. Enough, Jaime said, to his own startlement. Eyes turned to him. Some amused, some affronted, Tywin's almost indifferent. The realm needs quiet more than any retribution. If you must make arrests tonight, arrest rumor. We will question those who poured the wine and those who baked the pies. We will shut the city gates until the morning. Lord Varys, find the whole Sansa Stark could have slipped through and put rats in them. Ser Mace, keep your men in their tents and your cooks out of our kitchens. And Father, you will have to endure my intrusion with the watch. They answer to me until the sun is up. Why would they answer to you? Mace said, confused and belatedly offended. Because a boy is king, Oberyn answered for him, lips curving. And a boy sleeps. And because golden lions confuse prowling dogs more than purple roses do. Tywin inclined his head. Do what you will, he said to Jaime, in the easy tone of a hunter who lets the hound pull the meat down. Bring me answers in the morning. Until then we will suspect no one and everyone. In the corridors outside the council chamber the castle had gone quieter, as if the stones themselves were remembering other nights like this and how they had held their breath then as well. Jaime walked the galleries with two white shadows at his back and thought of the story told of Maegor's Holdfast itself. How the old king had hidden in it while rebels bayed at his walls. How the bridge could be severed with a chain and the little island made an island fully, a safe heart in a dangerous body. The trouble with strong places, he thought, was that sometimes the trouble was locked in with the safety. He had locked Cersei away with her grief, and grief was a sorcerer when it wanted to be. He slept a little toward dawn, coat of mail on, sword unsheathed on the coverlet beside him. In his dream he stood in a room of swords again, and a boy king opened his mouth to ask why, and little stones spilled out. Pearls, blue and pink and red, and when they struck the floor they cracked, and the smell that rose was of almonds. He woke to the bells of dawn. Morning bells, not a day's bells, and to Balon's swan at his door with a face that had never quite learned outrage. The hand requires your presence, Balon said. He looked like a man who had rehearsed other words and chosen the plain ones anyway. Jaime dressed while he walked and arrived in the council chamber with a slice of sky in the windows like pewter. Cersei was there, dressed in black so fast that it had to be a miracle of servants. Her eyes were steady and wild at once, and when she saw him she smiled in that small way she had when she knew she would win at an argument no matter how long it took. Tywin had paper spread before him like maps for a siege. We will have a trial, Tywin said, as if they had all slept and agreed upon it in their dreams. Tyrion of House Lannister stands accused of regicide. The city expects blood. We will give it law. Law? Oberyn echoed, almost savoring the syllable. We will see what it tastes like in King's Landing. Jaime did not look at Tyrion's empty chair. He looked at Cersei and saw the way she held her hands, the way she pressed thumb to palm, over and over as if kneading dough. She had learned to compose herself too fast this morning for that tell to be unintentional. It was for him. It said, you have done this to me, and I will remember the shape of your face when I pay you back. The days that followed had the stretched quality of rain that won't fall. Tommen woke and would not cry until Marjorie put her hand on his hair and told him it was all right to do it once. Then he cried as if the city's cisterns were in him, and after that he dried like laundry. He learned to hold a quill like a king and to nod when advisors said words like revenue and embargo and famine though he did not know them. He carried the weight of a kingdom the way any child carries anything, first with his hands, then with his shoulders, then with his whole small back. The city slid toward order because Tywin's will and the threat of the Watch did not leave it another direction. Rumors ran, of course. Rumors were water. The imp, the Tyrells, the foreign whore, the pie, the chalice, the little doves that had scattered from the cake. The hound secretly returned from the wars to bite his lord's throat out. Jaime heard them all. He walked past them with white shadows and knew that truth, when it was finally dragged out and stripped, would be less satisfying than the stories. Tyrion's trial opened under a sky like a bruise. The throne room wore its usual mask of grandeur. The light through the narrow windows made Tywin look very much like a statue that had learned to move. Cersei's black was a void among colors. Tyrion stood very still as the herald read charges thick with words like willful, malicious, and kingslaying, none of which hinted that men killed kings because kingdoms bent them to it. "Do you understand the charges as read?" Tywin asked, as if he were asking if Tyrion would take more wine. "I do," Tyrion said, voice mild and ragged. He did not look at Jaime once. That was for the best. Witnesses spoke. Ser Meryn, that slug in a helm, flatly recounted insults Tyrion had let fly in the safer days of Joffrey's mania. Ser Osmond did the same, with more relish. Pycelle found bottles hidden in Tyrion's rooms, as Pycelle could always find exactly what the moment required. Varys said exactly as much as would keep the realm's winds in the direction they were already blowing. Sansa was nowhere. Shae was nowhere, and Jaime felt that as a relief he hadn't known he wanted. Not for any love of the girl, but because there was only so much a man could watch someone else use your blood for. Jaime did not sit among the judges. He stood at the base of the throne, a white shadow with his visor up, doing the job he had chosen, the only job that had ever fit him, even when it had drowned him. When the afternoon was a slow fire, Tyrion raised his hand. "I confess," he said. The movement in the room was like grass in wind. Jaime tasted copper, though he was not bleeding. "I confess," Tyrion said again, and his voice had found a high, bright place in him. "I confess that I am guilty of being a dwarf." Laughter, nervous and eager, a sound that cities use when they smell blood and want to find an easier thing to think about. Cersei's mouth made a small, triumphant curve. Tywin's eyes, for once, were not easy to read. Tyrion went on, the words now not wine but knives. About a boy king and his petty cruelties, about the way men had laughed while a child tormented other children, about how easy the court had found it to watch evil so long as it was dressed in inlaid velvet. He spoke about justice in a room where justice had been mocked into a costume. When he was done, he did not ask their pardon. "I demand trial by combat," he said. Cersei's shoulders went down a fraction, as if she had been holding a bow drawn and had finally found a target. "The crown accepts," she said softly. "Champion?" Tywin asked her, and she did not even pretend to look at anyone but one man in particular. "Ser Gregor Clegane," she said. A sound passed through the hall. It had nothing to do with justice. It had to do with the way men who have known a monster recognize the sound of his name, even if it is whispered under a door. "And for the accused?" Tywin said, each word a step placed precisely. If he was unsettled by what he had set in motion, he did not show it. He looked, as he always looked, like a man who knew where all the stones were in a stream before he had placed his foot upon it. Tyrion turned his head and searched the crowd. The world held its breath to see if the dwarf would be abandoned even by his wit. Then another sound came, fainter but more dangerous. Bells. "I will fight for the imp," Oberyn Martell said, rising as if he had always been standing. The flames in the braziers found all the oil in his eyes. "I have long wished to kill your mountain." Cersei's black was very black. Later, in a room that had held too many secrets already, Jaime found Oberyn testing the balance of a spear. The steel smiled. The prince's hands were as steady as a gossip's joy. "You have a death wish," Jaime said. He did not mean it as an insult. "I have a wish," Oberyn said. "Death is not it. Gregory Clegane is not a tournament opponent." Oberyn's mouth carved a crescent. "So they tell me. They say he is a mountain with a blade where the peak should be. They say you cannot cut a mountain, but perhaps you can bleed one, and perhaps blood is heavier when it falls." "You could ask for another," Jaime said. "The rules bend when Tywin wants them to. Do you think I want them bent?" Oberyn's eyes were very dark. "Prince, whoremonger, murderer, lover, father. Add madman to the list if you like. But I do what I do because I do not find life interesting when I do not. I have waited many years to ask a Clegane whom he served the day my sister's children died. If I die asking, that is one story. If I live and make him answer, that is another. Which would you read? Jaime had no answer to that. He had read too many stories in rooms like this and found the endings always in need of ink. When the day came, iron pressed down on the air like weather. The yard thrummed with watchers. Ser Gregor entered like a man who believed the world was a table that didn't wobble when he sat down at it. He had the same face as always, a cliff face, wind-carved and not subject to the plants that grew in front of it. He wore mail that could have been a gate. He swung his greatsword in a slow arc that made a sound like someone cutting bread, thick and heavy. Oberyn came like music. He had stripped to a shirt and mail, and he moved as if he were remembering a dance the rest of them had only seen in stories, a southern pattern of foot and wrist and breath. The spear was a third limb. The sun knew him, and the bells in his hair made a prophecy of their own. The thing about mountains is that they are slow and they are inevitable. The thing about dancers is that they make inevitability a little ridiculous before they die. Or before they make the mountain trip. Still met still. It was not like any sound the yard had heard. Oberyn did not meet the sword. He met the man's hands and wrists with the butt, the shaft, the leather wrap, the sudden dart of steel at the end carefully turned aside at the last. He cut nothing important for a long time. He cut pride. He cut rhythm. He cut the memory of every man in the yard of how fights are usually fought. He was always an inch away from dying, and he moved through that inch as if it were simply air. Who gave the order? Oberyn sang, and now his voice was a ribbon trailing behind his spear. Who gave the order to kill her? Who gave the order to kill the babes in their mother's arms? Gregor roared. He bled a little at the arm from a cut that would not slow a boar. He bled a little at the thigh from a cut that would not trouble a cart horse. He bled, and the blood was a promise. Who? Oberyn demanded, in a tone he might have used to coax a lover to admit a sin that would be forgiven in the forgiving. Say it. Gregor charged. The spear slid, kissed, withdrew. It became a question mark pressed into flesh. Oberyn spun and the bells chimed and the mountain stumbled and then did not, and then did, and then lifted the sword one-handed and brought it down and found only air. O grovel, o curse, o bright. Glitter of spittle. Something changed in the yard then. The watchers began to believe in a new ending to an old story. Oberyn slashed low and drew the blade up as if he were opening a curtain. The mail at Gregor's hip parted like cloth that had been badly mended. Blood came a lot. Gregor howled and went to one knee. The yard's breath went out like a candle. Who gave the order? Oberyn asked again, not loudly, not softly. He made the spear's point a painter's brush and wrote a thin red line on the meat of Gregor's neck. Say it. Say the name. Gregor's helm twisted toward the dais, towards the man on it. That was the error Oberyn had been working for. The spear flashed. It went in beneath the arm where the plates cannot sit comfortably. Up and in and then up again in a cruel little hook. Gregor fell. The sound was not like a man falling. It was like a table collapsing under too much food. The yard shouted, and it was not a cheer exactly. It was what a body does when it discovers it has a second lung. Oberyn stood above him, breathing hard, the spear embedded. The bells in his hair were silent now so the blood could be heard better. Say it, Oberyn said. Say who gave the order. Gregor snarled, and the sound had little man left in it. The mouth worked behind the visor. He started, and the yard surged forward a quarter step in one animal. Ord. The rest of it was a choking, not of poison, but of blood thick in the road between mind and tongue. The spear had made that road long and crooked. Finish, Oberyn said. He did not touch the spear. He stood with his hand extended, as if offering a cup. Say his name in front of them. Gregor vomited blood and spat teeth. Tai. It was not a word. It was the beginning of one. It hung in the yard like a fly caught half in amber. Oberyn had always had a gambler's sense of odds. He put a foot to Gregor's chest and pulled the spear free and then drove it again, and again and again, until the man beneath was only meat that had once carried a name. When he stepped back, he swayed. The bells in his hair whispered. He breathed. He did not die. The yard became a madhouse in silence. Men turned and looked at the dais. Tywin sat as he had sat, each finger in its proper place on the arm of the chair. His expression had not moved. His eyes had. Cersei's lips were bloodless and very thin. "Tyrion of House Lannister," Tywin said, after one heartbeat, after two. His voice did not waver. "You are acquitted by the laws that bind us. You are free." Tyrion did not move at first. He looked at Oberyn with something like awe, and something like hatred for the need to feel awe at another man's mercy. Then he bowed, not to Tywin, not to the gods, not even to Oberyn, but to the yard itself. When he straightened, Jaime finally met his eyes, and he saw in them not thanks but the hollow place that comes after you have prepared all your life to die and then have not. It was like looking into a well that had been emptied in the night. What does a hand do when a walking confession lies cooling at his feet? Tywin did what Tywin always did. He moved forward one piece, then the next. "See that the body is tended," he told Qyburn, and Qyburn inclined his head as if he had been offered a festival. "Summon the Lord Commander of the City Watch," he said, and the gold cloaks moved as if prodded by a hot iron. "This is not end of any matter. Indeed, it was the start of new ones." Dornish tempers burned bright and soft. Bright in the day, soft at night in beds or wine. They were very bright that week. Oberyn lived, which was perhaps the unkindest thing to Tywin's plans. He lived and he did not need to shout. His people did it for him, softly, in courtyards, over fruit, in shadowed corners with the sea creaking and the smell of Terrish oranges in the air. They said that a Clegane had tried to name the maker of the evil that spilled from him. They said a name without finishing it, and they did not have to finish it because their listeners did it for them in their minds. The Tyrells did what flowers do in a storm. They bent. Their roots held. Their petals turned their faces to the nearest, newest sun. Marjorie became sweetness and duty and piety done properly, and Tommen's hand grew used to the feel of hers. Mace blustered and sent meat to the barracks and talked about justice being a tapestry you could stand in front of without seeing the back. Olenna smiled at many people and said little and watched much. Cersei had only her rage. The day Jaime returned her to rooms not watched by silent sisters, she slapped him. The sound echoed in the chamber like a token thrown on a table. He tasted his own blood. She had worn a ring with a flat stone and it had cut his lip. "Do you feel it?" she said, eyes dry now, voice soft. "Do you feel how many hours there are in a day when your son is dead?" "I feel every one," he said. He did not move his hand to the blood. "You shame me," she said. "Every step you take, every order you give. That dwarf lives because you tied my hands and let the Tyrell bitch feed lies to Tommen while I sat in a cell and listened to mice breed. And you stand there and bleed a little and think you have paid something." "I think nothing of the sort," he said. "I think there is a list, and I will die before I reach the end of it." She laughed then, and the laugh had no humor and all the humor in the world. "You will die sooner than you know." She tried at first to use the Kettleblacks and found them tighter leashed than they had been, for Jaime had made a point of strangling the tangle of her little spies, not because he could not live with them but because he would not let them live with Tommen. She tried to summon the watch and found that orders now went through Tywin and, more annoyingly, through Jaime. She tried to hire a whisperer and discovered that Varys ran his routes both ways, and that doors which had once opened at the SI. JHT of her hand now opened a crack and then shut. So she turned the only way left to her, which was inward. She watched Tommen and he watched her, and the new space between them tasted like ashes in both their mouths. Marjorie threaded herself into that space, soft-footed, lily-scented. If Cersei could have had the girl put down a well, she would have. She did other things instead. She planted small poison seeds in Tommen's head, of how quickly men smiled when you had a crown on and how slow they would be to die for you. The boy listened and blinked and did not know what to do with the seeds yet. He was too young to grow anything but kittens. Tyrion did not leave the city, though it would have been wise. Where would he go? To Casterly Rock and the father who had tried to kill him by law? To the river and a boat with an Eastern name? He came to Jaime once at dusk, when the halls were emptying of voices and filling with the whisper of reeds outside. "So," he said, "here we are. I live. It seems unreal in a way that dying never did." "You are not a man accustomed to gratitude," Jaime said, "and yet it would not be out of place to thank Oberyn Martell." "Oh, I have," Tyrion said dryly. "You should have seen the expression on his paramour's face when I tried to kiss his hand in some mockery of Dornish courtship. He laughed until red wine came out his nose. I am surprised, actually, that you do not tell me to thank you. You have saved me in your fashion." "I did not save you," Jaime said. "A man with bells in his hair and a spear longer than your wit did that. I only kept enough order that the game could be played with its usual pieces. For once the pieces decided to move in a line that did not crush you." Tyrion stared into the dusk. "He tried to say it," he said in a tone one might use when confessing to a lover that one had dreamed of someone else. "The thing we have all known without proof, the thing we all deny because it is easier on our teeth. He tried to say Father's name." "He failed," Jaime said. "Not entirely," Tyrion said. "Words do not need to be complete to do their work. Tell me something, Jaime." He turned, and suddenly he was not a fool, and he was not a drunk, and he was not a man who had stood in a ring of swords and begged to be judged by violence. He was a very sharp instrument that had been honed by hate into something fine. If he had finished the word, what then? Would the world have changed? Would it have mattered? "It would have mattered to Oberyn," Jaime said. "To Oberyn," Tyrion echoed. "To Oberyn it has already mattered. To me, less than you would think. I have always known what Father would do for an end he desired, because he would do it to me. Ask me how I know. But the city will hear that half-name and fill it with the rest. And Father will not be able to kill all the tongues." "No," Jaime said. "He will not. He will try to do the next best thing." "And what is that?" Tyrion said. He smiled in a way that said he already knew. "He will build a story so heavy it will crush the other one under it," Jaime said. "He will marry Tommen so fast the ink will not dry on the condolence letters. He will name more tariffs than a man can remember, and he will make the coins sing and the ships run. And in 6 months' time the only thing men will be willing to argue about is whether olives should be taxed in casks or in jars." Tyrion laughed, and the laugh was filthy and affectionate. "Gods," he said, "I do love us." Jaime did not join him. He walked onto a balcony and listened to the city's evening song, hawkers and bells and gulls and the slap of water against piles. Somewhere a woman was singing to a child, and the melody was older than walls. He looked up and saw a single pale star go out as a cloud passed over it and then come back again. It went on. That was the lesson of years. It went on in patterns that were familiar and knots that were not. Tywin arranged Tommen's wedding to Marjorie with such haste that seamstresses cursed him in languages they had never learned. The sept was hung in white and the crown looked too big and a little ridiculous. Tommen stammered his vows and Marjorie did not. Cersei watched with hands that did not tremble. She gripped the railing so hard that the underside of the balcony learned the shape of her fingers and would remember it when dust had replaced the bone that made those fingers bend. Oberyn occupied a house on the river where he could put his feet into water and pretend it was not King's Landing. He saw his daughters off as if they were geese being set into a current. He drank wine with Ilaria and laughed at unwary courtiers and went very still sometimes when he thought no one was watching. He did not press a formal charge. He did not need to. The city had pressed it without him and tried it in dream. His victory had been a petition lodged not in law but in a place older. Tywin knew this better than any man. They met, finally, father and son, alone in a room with a little fire, the light turning Tywin's rings into things that wanted to be eyes. "You have made a choice," Tywin said. "Yes," Jaime said. He stood. When did he not stand in these talks? As a boy he had thought that love would one day mean sitting at ease in a chair in this room. That had been the first lie he had found. "You have chosen a cloak over a castle," Tywin said. "I have chosen my vows," Jaime said. "They are not the same as my cloak." "You are a fool," Tywin said. He said it without heat. He said it as if he were naming a species. The rock does not need your vows. It needs your blood. It needs your son. It needs your name to remain what it is, which is a weight that does not shift when lesser men lean against it. There will be no son, Jaime said, and the words were as clean as a blade pulled from a sheath. He tasted an odd freedom saying them out loud in this room. Not from me. Not now. No more pretenses. No more lies that become STO. Ness because we think we can walk on them. You will learn that names matter more than truth, Tywin said. If you had not yet, I am ashamed. Do you know? Jaime looked into his father's face and saw, for the first time, the boy who must have been in there once. He could not imagine Tywin as a child. The thought was absurd, like imagining the sea as a puddle. And yet the bones were bones, and the eyes had had to learn to be hard. When I killed Ares, he said quietly, because it was in this room that the words had been unspoken so long they had built their own rafters. It was to keep him from the wildfire. Did you know? He meant to burn them all. The city. You and me and Cersei and Tyrion and every boy who would ever be king and every girl who would ever be queen. He meant to burn us so the smoke would smell like his name forever. I chose then. I chose people who could not stop him over the word men would call me afterward. It seems I am doomed to choose that way again and again. Tywin's face did something it had not done in years. It changed without him intending it. For a breath his mouth fell open. You did your duty, he said, and there was wonder in it. A small thing surprised as a bird. I did, Jaime said. That is what I am telling you. And now I am doing it again. Tywin closed his mouth. The bird flew away. You will regret this, he said, because you will see what happens to men who make choices without considering the cost. I consider the cost, Jaime said. I simply choose to pay it. They stared at each other then because there was nothing else left to do. In time, the city learned to eat and drink and grumble under a new king who smiled more and shouted less. Flea Bottom forgot one death and found 12 more, all of them cheaper. Ships came, ships went. The ravens flew north and south and took longer to return. Winter said its name in the mouths of servants as a thing the nobles mentioned and the small folk believed. Cersei and Marjorie danced a slow, elegant war through corridors and under tapestries. The kind of war that draws blood in sighs and not in spurts. Cersei tried to pull servants out from under Marjorie with coin and undesirable assignments. Marjorie countered with kindness to the same servants and with visiting the kitchens at strange hours. Every kindness a coin, every coin a kindness. Tommen smiled and held his pen and did not see the battle lines drawn with catgut across his days. Oberyn left in the end, because the city was a hook in him and he refused to be bait forever. Before he went, he drew a circle around a name with the tip of his spear in a private garden and said nothing. Illyria kissed the air and promised to return to the river when the fruit turned again. The bells in Oberyn's hair did not chime when he boarded. The water did not permit it. Tyrion came to stand with Jaime one night on the bridge to Maegor's Holdfast while the torches painted the water with their long hot brushes. The moon made a coin of itself between two rooftops and then tossed itself into the river. Do you ever imagine it different? Tyrion asked. All the time, Jaime said. In mine, Tyrion said. Joffrey lives and is exactly as he was, and the only difference is that we are more tired. In mine, Jaime said. He dies and we do not become worse people trying to make that death into something that absolves us. Tyrion made a small sound. We are Lannisters, he said. We do not do absolution. We do accounting. Then let us reckon, Jaime said, and he grasped the railing and took the weight of it into his hand. It was a good weight. It said what stone always says. I am older than your worst mistake. I arrested Cersei, he said. I will never have her back. You never did, Tyrion said. For once he did not say it to hurt. I helped keep you alive, Jaime said. Father will never forgive me. He never did, Tyrion said softer. I made Tommen safe, Jaime said. I do not know what that makes the boy in the end. A boy, Tyrion said. For a little while longer. The river slid past, thick and ugly and beautiful. In some other part of the world, snow fell for the first time all year on a field where men had died and no one remembered their names. In the north, a wolf lifted his head and listened to a silence full of cold. In the east, a girl without a father name learned a trick with knives that would one day make a man forget his face. In King's Landing, bells slept until morning. Jaime left the bridge and walked into the holdfast where Tommen slept and a cat blinked. He paused at a door and laid his palm against it and thought of a woman inside and of another door in another castle where he had once done the same. He did not go in. He had given orders. He would not break them because he wanted to. He returned to the White Sword Tower as dawn smeared its first pale thumb across the sky. He opened the book. The book always brought him back to a simple thing. Men wrote their lives in it with a hand steadier than living allowed them. He had hated the book for years because it had not given him the words he wanted to read about himself, the words that would make the world agree with the truth he knew about one hot day. He had stopped hating it when he understood that the page would never change, but he could. He dipped the quill. He wrote, a few lines only, that he had done his duty, that he had made a choice between love and law and had chosen a third thing that was neither and both. That for a day and a night after the king's death, the blades were sheathed and the city did not burn because the Kingsguard had remembered what the white was for. He did not sign the line with pride. He signed it because it was true. From the window, he watched the first banners stir as the wind came off the river. Somewhere below, a boy would be waking and looking at his crown. Somewhere else, a woman would be lighting a candle and telling herself that the first step is patience and the second is poison. Somewhere else, a father would be laying out the day like tiles and setting his foot on each one. He thought of a throne room and a madman's breath and of the feel of steel biting through velvet and through flesh. He thought of another room and a black-clad prince singing the name of justice until it answered. He thought of the space in him that had once been full of one woman's laughter and how it was quieter now, how the quiet had its own kind of sound if you listened long enough. He set the quill down and went to work.